you go.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Come on in. Come on in. I'll get this set up. Yes. Come on in the room. Yes, I see a few folks in here. Hey, everybody. This is the after show. We just finished Loving Black People, A Conversation, Volume 1. I'll be here. I'm here to answer some questions, but also get into the comments. Let me know what your favorite part of the show was. I appreciate Ashley Woodson, Sonia Douglas Horsford. Hey, Leslie. I appreciate Tim Hurd. Look out for him coming to a PhD program near you. My beautiful friends, Ryan Whitney, many thanks to them, and to my videographer, producer, brother Mark Tutson for putting that broadcast together and bringing my little vision to life. I really appreciate everybody who's worked behind and in front of the camera to get this done. So, hey, Serena. So I won't hold you long. I want to take some questions. If you haven't already, go ahead and pre-order my new book. Show love. And let me hear back. Anybody who caught any part of the broadcast, what was your favorite part? Or what questions do you have about it? I'll say that I think this is a really important moment. It was important to me to do a project like this at this time for some obvious reasons, but also it's easy to forget when we're in the middle of tragedy and chaos. It's easy for us to forget how much we've overcome and how much we've accomplished and how much we've come through as a people. And so part of loving us is remembering. It's such an important part that we can't forget from whence we've come, right? It's so important. And when we look in the faces of young people, of our babies in schools, it's so important that they see that we see in them possibility, right? So this book and this series that I'm embarking on this year, it is my intention to draw us closer to that remembering and that commitment that above all, we have to love Black people. I heard my friend this week say, his work in Black studies is animated bar none by a love for Black people. You can't talk about Black people, write about Black people, and you don't love us. And that's so important. So yes, I appreciate y'all so much. T and Brittany, Albert, I appreciate it. Any other thought? I don't want to be on here long. I'm gonna announce my first book winner. So this is what you have to do, though. If I announce your name, you have to get in touch. You have to go and email me info, or hit me up on Twitter, info@ChezareWarren.com. I'm easy to find. But the first winner is Regina Gong, G-O-N-G, is the first winner of the book. Thank you, Candace. And this is community work. It's work that we all have to do together. I'm not setting out to be the lone voice, trying to get us to think about loving Black people, but I really just want to be a part of a conversation that are always being had in public and in private, but that we don't always recognize and notice. And so my intention with my book, but also with the other creative work to come this year, which you'll see, that work it all has one message. It all has one message, and that message is lifting us up and loving us to our core. And that is what's important as we are wrapping up Black History Month and we think about Black futures. we have to center on possibility as core to the work that we're doing. Yeah. So let me take your questions. Any questions or any other feedback about the show? Thank you, friends. I appreciate you, brother. We are full of strength and we are full of joy. And then, as a matter of fact, while I have you here, use the chat. Let's speak well of us, right? Another winner for the signed book is Mario Brown. Mario Brown, congratulations. Also a winner of the signed book. You know I'm sweating and hot. Dr. Grace says, my favorite point, I hope my ancestors will give me grace. So speaking of, let me talk a little bit about the cover of this book. First of all, this book cover was designed and drawn by hand by the name of Nate Austin, who is from Cleveland. You can find him at artbynfa.com. I think .com or .org. artbynfa.org. And this is an ode to Henrietta Lacks. And in the first chapter of the book, I talk about remembering and what it means for the ancestors to leave us clues that we will need along the journey as we aspire to become our full selves and our best selves. I just saw this picture and I just thought, this is like the ancestors reaching back, right? Like they may not be physically here, but they're always leaving us stories and clues and messages in our love for one another as sort of anchor points to guide us home. So I have a question from Jakar. You mentioned that remembering is a key element in centering possibility. How do we interrogate what should be remembered in juxtaposition to what should be forgotten? Ooh, that's good. How do we determine and interrogate what should be remembered in juxtaposition to what should be forgotten? That's a good question. And I don't know that I have a good answer to that question, but what that conjures for me is the one thing I always want to remember is how far we've come. When I'm struggling through a moment, or I look on the news, right, and we see another Black person killed at the hands of the state, I want to remember that even as gory and awful as that is, I'm the lineage and the descendant of people who come through even far worse than that. And I want to always remember our strength, and I always want to remember our fugitivity. I want to remember how it is that we've always stared at our terror. We've stared our terror in the face and still decided to resist and to make our own way, right? And so I always want to remember that. And I don't know that I want to forget how awful it was, because in some ways, even remembering the bad stuff is motivation to sort of create and to build what we do want. Right? Sometimes knowing what we want requires knowing what we don't want. That's a really good question. There's more to talk through with that piece. I have a question here from Candace. And before I answer her question, the third winner is William Hahn, H-A-H-N. So I want to be reaching out to these folks. Congratulations. Candace says, when we think about centering possibility as core to work needed in Black education, should we be thinking about this in terms of reform or as a revolution? Sometimes it's extremely difficult to effect change within a system that was built off of inequity. And sometimes it is worth it to just start over. Oh man, Candace, the very quick and easy answer to this is that it's absolutely revolution. It's not reform, because reform definitely suggests that our system works exactly how it's supposed to work. And it is working for some people, but for Black people, it has never worked, right? And so we do need revolution, and we need revolution in the way of building our own institutions. And while we're in these institutions, however, there are some things that we can start to do. And part of why I wrote a book about possibility was that we can, even in a climate of school reform, we can start to think about how we read particular bodies as worthy of care and our best, and then how we read other bodies as not worthy of that same care. And when we look at Black bodies, we tend to disdain and disregard what their, Black kids' dreams are, what their goals are, what's important and valuable to them, what their passions are. And instead, we project onto them, go to college, go to this Northeast charter school. These are all things that are going to fix the problems of Black people and Black communities. And we just know that to be wrong. And so I'm inspired by Marcus Garvey. I'm inspired by Stokely Carmichael. I'm inspired by people who said we should and can have our own stuff. So this is, you all asking some important questions. And the winner number 4 is Juan Butler, All Nations Worship Assembly in the house. Congratulations. Yeah. Other questions? Those are great questions. Those are great questions. Are other parts of the show that you really liked? Or just other general comments folks want to add to the chat? Yeah, I'm sweating profusely, people. I'm really hot under this light. Let me share my last winner here, which happens to be my student, Andrea Thanos. Congratulations, Andrea. Thank you, T. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And what are you all doing as a closer? What are your commitments to Black history and Black futures as we close out Black History Month 2021? What are your commitments? I'm interested to see sort of how folks are wanting to lean in, right? Because we know that loving Black people is not what we do in February. We do it every day of the year, right? I have another question here. How have you situated possibility with respect to your own story? How should we apply fluidity to our imaginations of possibility? Oh, that's great. I wake up most days of the week and I'm so surprised with where I am in my life and what I've been able to do and what I've been able to accomplish. I don't have a long, sad story about all of the many things that I had to overcome to get where I am. But I will say that I am living a life that is beyond my wildest imagination, in part because I'm not historically been a person to imagine very much. I think I've had pretty low expectations for what I could probably do and accomplish in the world, but I have always had a particular commitment to learning and to being invested in my work. Whatever that work was, I wanted to do that work really well. And it's afforded me some incredible opportunities. And for me, I'm not special. I'm not exceptional. And there are people who would want to sort of apply that label as to suggest you are the exceptional Black person. And I reject that. I refuse that. I think we're all exceptional in each our own way. And as I said in the conversation, part of our work of freedom is finding purpose in our person, who we are, and showing up in our bodies and being unashamed and unafraid of who we are. Right. And so when I think about my life, the older I get, the more I'm trying to lean in to who I am in all the ways. And possibility is about figuring out as individually, it's about figuring out who and what you want to be in the world and how do I gather the resources and the networks and the people to do that. But my other responsibility outside of myself is to look at other Black people and assume the best at all times and to create space for us. I really like what Ashley said at the start of the conversation. Pain is a part of the human condition. It's a part of our story. So we're not shrinking back and forgetting that schools, for example, can be understood as sites of pain and suffering, but we're also taking that and we're looking and digging into that for the possibility. One thing that Derek Bell said in Face at the Bottom of the Well, towards the end of the book, he talked about, he quoted the Odyssey and saying that enslaved Africans carved out, they defied the murder of selfhood, and they carved out a humanity, right? They made space for their humanity. And I think part of our work in doing the work of possibility and leading with possibility is creating space for people's humanity, to create space for Black kids to fall apart, but to also be built up. And I think part of what possibility and what I'm hoping that the book will do is to help folks to understand that when you look into the face of a Black child, you are looking and staring at possibility. It doesn't matter what their behavior is. It doesn't necessarily matter how they showed up. Your responsibility is to pull out of them the very best of them, right? And to give them the opportunity and the space to lean into who they are and who they're becoming. So it's a really, really important question that you're asking that we just need to continue to talk through. Yeah. All right. I'll stay on a couple more minutes if we have some more questions here, but I don't want to hold you all too long. I have another question. Who are the top 3 leaders in fighting for equity now? Whoa, that's a big question. Who are the top 3 leaders? I don't know that I have an answer to that question, to be honest. In part because, you know, I'm a little troubled by the language of equity sometimes because it can be very much watered down. And when you start to think about capitalism, you can have a huge stage and still not love us, and you'd be doing the work of equity. And that's challenging to me. And so I think it's really important that we look inward and figure out, more importantly, what's my work? What's my revolutionary act, right? What's my commitment to advancing justice for those who have been most marginalized when we think about the intersections, right? Queer people, Black queer Muslim people, right? And we think about all of the different intersections. How am I working to liberate those folks? How am I using my privilege and power to do that? I think that's a more important question to ask, but important to think about. Yes. Thanks, Zach. Good to see you. Glad you could join us. Listen, before I go, I must also remind you, you can totally pre-order my new book, Centering Possibility in Black Education. It is a labor of love, and I hope very much that you feel, as you read it, a love letter to Black people. And I'll be very clear, I wrote this book with Black people in mind as my audience. That was important to me. Doesn't mean other people can't pick it up, right? But I wanted to be clear that there was a conversation that needed to be had. I think about leaders in the Black Power movement, and their call to arms were to other Black people. They were not trying to make grand appeals to the state and to government. And they wanted Black people to redefine what life needed to be for Black people by Black people. So, and I think I've written recently about a conversation about mourning and how important it is. You know, mourning is sad. It's a dark time, but I think it's also a moment where we start to, when we turn into ourselves, when we turn into our Blackness, into the dark of night, we can start to dream. Dreaming happens at night, right? So part of what this book is supposed to do is to recast darkness as something that we should lean into. It's not something that we run away from, right? And that's an important, I think, to the conversation that can sometimes go missing and get lost when we're pushing and naming the ways that anti-Blackness is so narrowly define our experiences as people. So, yeah, I'm so full of love. My family in the building, in the background. Say hey, family. Hey. My nephew. You all want to see my nephew? You want to come on the camera? You sure? Okay, he doesn't want to come on the camera.
Show the people your shirt. Show me your shirt.
Oh, come show me the shirt. Come on, quick. Quick means nothing to this child. Thank you, Rashawn. When I was a teacher, come on. There's nobody, you can't even see anybody. This is my nephew, Pearson. He said, racism, what did your shirt say? Okay, to the camera. Racism tried to steal my joy What does the other say? Oh, hi, tried. It tried. It tried. Tell them your name. Look right here. What's your name? His name is Pearson Michael Fitzgerald Wright. Okay, he's very shy today. He's being very shy. Thank y'all so much. There's so many great people in the room. Colleagues, my former students, former colleagues when I taught middle school. Oh, let me. So I'm gonna wrap up here by 7:15 Central. If you could recommend where to start reading Derek Bell, which book would you recommend a starting point? You know, I think Faces at the Bottom of the Well is actually a good starting point and a good companion follow-up to Faces. You ready to go? Okay. A follow-up to Faces is I can't remember the complete name, but it's called Gospel Hymns and Songs. Gospel is in the title, but it's a good follow-up to Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And for folks who are unfamiliar with Derek Bell in that book, he is a progenitor of critical race theory, and the book makes one pretty simple argument, which is racism is a permanent feature of American life. And in that book, he just sort of talks through the various logics that underscore the ways that racism is a permanent, indestructible feature of American society. But he returns to some of the dilemmas that he poses in Faces. He returns to those dilemmas in the Gospel Hymns book. So it's really good. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to see Felina. I love y'all. And let's continue to engage in the conversation and do the work together. I'm looking forward to what's ahead in 2021. We've lived through so much in 2020. And, you know, we have an opportunity to remake the world a little bit different than how we found it in 2020. So I'm excited to be a part of that conversation. I'm excited to go on the journey with you. And let's continue to be in touch. I'm sending all of you my love, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.